So we can begin now?
Yes.
Okay. Good evening and welcome to the City of Petaluma regular meeting of the City Council, the Petaluma Community Development Successor Agency, the Petaluma Public Financing Authority, and Petaluma Public Financing Corporation meeting of Monday, April 5th. Can we have the roll call?
Barrett.
Here.
Barnacle.
Here.
Fisher.
Here.
Healy.
Here.
King.
Here.
McDonald.
Here.
Osage.
Here.
All members are present.
Thank you. And we will now do the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we will now have a moment of silence. Thank you. Are there any agenda changes or deletions to the current agenda? I'm not seeing any hands up, so we will go forward with the agenda as printed. And now we'll move on to proclamations and recognitions. And for our first proclamation, it's actually a recognition, and I would like to bring to the community's attention a prestigious award that the city's received. The Ellis Creek Water Recycling Facility was recognized as the medium-sized plant of the year for 2020 by the California Water Environment Association. And I'd like to have our Assistant Director of Public Works and Utilities, Gina Benedetti-Petnick, to come forward and share some more information about this award.
Thank you, Mayor Barrett. Excuse me, I'm going to be looking off to the side at a second monitor. Forgive me if that looks like I'm not looking at you. But thank you, Madam Mayor, council members, and community members for this opportunity to recognize a singularly dedicated group of professionals that run the city's Ellis Creek Water Recycling Facility. Jason Beatty, our Director of Public Works, couldn't be with us tonight, but the two of us both share a tremendous amount of respect for our staff at this facility, what they do and how they do it. This city facility is a shining example in the region and the state of a well-run, efficient, and particularly innovative water treatment plant. Over the past 3 years, we've had no permit violations, and we continue to produce a very high-quality effluent, clean water, in both discharge and recycling modes of operation. During the dry summer months, we provide high-quality tertiary UV, ultraviolet, disinfected irrigation water, i.e. recycled water, to our many urban and agricultural users. Last year, Ellis Creek provided 510 million gallons of recycled water, which represents 24% of our influent flow. The management and staff at Ellis Creek are always working to minimize costs. And a great example of that was in 2017, after receiving a pricing of around $1.6 million to clear aquatic plant material from the polishing ponds and wetlands, staff decided that, and mind you, these aren't engineers. This is just operations staff decided we can do this cheaper, we can do this better. They came up with the methods and a fix, and the magic is that they did that for $30,000 on their own initiative, saving the city close to $1.6 million. It's one example of many of the cost reduction that influences decisions on a daily basis at the plant. In addition to regular preventative maintenance, our operators regularly are assessing and initiating changes that basically have the goals of minimizing energy usage and in 2018, Ellis Creek did a digester mixing study, and another great example of the things they do and how they do it. They realized that they could change their mixing strategies at the plant, and they could eliminate the need for continuous operations of both mixing pumps on both digesters. Those operational changes now implemented have reduced energy usage at the plant by 40% and are saving us $80,000 a year. In 2019, we constructed the bio-CNG compressed natural gas system that processes and compresses digester gas that we generate in the facility. And in our digesters, then that gas is clean and dried and compressed, and we are using that to fuel Recology garbage trucks. We measure that product in what we call GGE, and this year we expect to produce, GGE stands for gasoline gas equivalents. And this year we expect to produce about 15,000 gasoline gas equivalents. Next year we're expecting 55,000 gasoline gas equivalents, and ultimately our goal is 85,000 GGE production from this system. So all of these examples are a testament to the leadership and the team-oriented focus that make Ellis Creek Recycling Facility really just a shining star in water recycling plants and excellence. The emphasis on energy efficiency, cost reduction, and innovation are really their hallmark. And it is not only an asset to the city of Petaluma, but a tremendous asset to the region. And we look to them with gratitude. So I'd like to recognize the professionalism and dedication of several staff members over at Ellis Creek, in particular Matt Pierce, our operations supervisor. Tremendous amount of leadership during the past 8 months when he went with a lot of staffing shortages, including his boss, who was the deputy director for environmental services. Upon her retirement and prior to our new deputy director coming on, Matt pretty much had full responsibility out at the plant and did an amazing job. I also want to recognize our senior lab analyst, Brittany Worthen, our environmental service analyst, Chelsea Thompson, our senior plant mechanic, Will Crane, and our 2 environmental compliance inspectors, Dylan Smith and Mac Isher. All of them helped fill the voids of those management positions that we lost, and really together, collaboratively, carefully guided us through a really challenging period. So with that, I'd like to introduce our new Deputy Director of Environmental Services, Jason Farnsworth. And Jason is coming to us from City of Stockton, where he was a Deputy Director over the wastewater collection and stormwater systems there. Jason's already proven invaluable with his insight and his experience as the city has navigated the challenge of long-standing, significant non-compliance with one of its industrial users. And he's helping us formulate best approach in managing our future stormwater compliance requirements. So again, thank you, Madam Mayor and council members, for giving me the time to express our gratitude and respect, and congratulations to the Ellis Creek team. And with that, I will kick it off to Jason Farnsworth. I think he's here, but I don't see him. Oh, there he is. Hi, Jason.
Hello, I'm Jason Farnsworth, new Deputy Director of Environmental Services out of Ellis Creek. Very happy to be here, very excited to be on the team, and look forward to contributing to the city of Petaluma and the future successes.
Well, thank you very much, Jason, and it's good to meet you. I think maybe all of us are meeting you here for the first time. I know I am, and it's so good to have someone come in, and now you have a very high bar that we expect you to live up to and surpass. So we look forward to your future work, and thank you for joining our team.
You're welcome, and thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Gina, for that introduction. I appreciate that. So with that, we're going to go on to our next proclamation, which is for our healthcare district. And this is Healthcare District Month in May of 2021. And whereas the Petaluma Healthcare District, which was formed in 1946, serves as a public agency owned by the community for the community, with board members locally elected and accountable to their community to address a shortage of hospital beds and medical equipment. And whereas Petaluma Healthcare District believes good health is a state of complete physical, mental, and societal well-being, and not merely the absence of disease, and is dedicated to the specific needs of Southern Sonoma County residents with a focus on prevention and wellness strategies. And whereas Petaluma Healthcare District provides the Petaluma community with continued access to local, quality, acute, and emergency hospital services for a minimum of 20 years through the sale of Petaluma Valley Hospital, with the proceeds from the sale providing community benefit through ongoing strategic sustainable investments to improve health outcomes and work toward ensuring an integrated system of healthcare services and wellness programs benefiting the entire community, especially populations that are most vulnerable. And whereas Petaluma Healthcare District serves as a community leader and local health action chapter to support a county-wide effort to make Sonoma County a healthy place for all residents to live, work, play, and belong, which includes raising awareness of key local health issues, addressing social determinants of health, and highlighting critical health disparities within the community. And whereas Petaluma Healthcare District provides direct services such as HealthQuest CPR, serves as a backbone organization for community health initiatives such as the Community Health Initiative of the Petaluma area and Heart Safe Community, and provides funding and support to local nonprofits and service providers to promote health and wellness. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Teresa Barrett, Mayor of Petaluma, along with the members of the City Council, do hereby declare the month of May 2021 as Healthcare District Month. And with that, I would like to ask Ramona Faith to say a few words.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor and council members for proclaiming May as Healthcare District Month. We certainly appreciate that. We are excited about the work ahead of us. We are certainly thankful that we have reached an agreement with our hospital in the sense that we have secured access for 20 years plus, which is great. And now we're really focusing on the social determinants and strengthening partnerships and really looking at how we can impact access to mental health services and really focusing on our students' distance learning concerns. I don't know if you've seen a report, but a recent survey that was done in January, there was about 2,500 to 3,000 students across Sonoma County were surveyed, and 70% of the students surveyed reported feelings of depression, anxiety, and stress. So there's a lot of support and a lot of actions that we need to do as a community to help address some of the impacts of distance learning. I'm really proud to say that in May we are partnering with the Petaluma Department Parks and Recs Department to put on a virtual event. It's called May Your Health Move Forward, and it is a month-long event in May. It's virtual and is focused on health, connections. There's going to be a lot of opportunities to participate in, and it's not all about getting out and running or biking for those that can't get out and run and bike. It can be gathering with individuals, or it can be mindfulness and meditation. So we're looking forward to that. And I want to thank the Parks and Recs Department in Petaluma for working with us. They've been very helpful, and they are co-hosting the event with us. So it just shows the partnership that we have with all of you. So I want to thank you again, and I want to recognize that I want you to know that we have a wonderful board, and each one of our board members are truly committed to improving the health of our community, and I'm very proud to work with them, and I'm very proud of partnering with all of you. So thank you so much again. In gratitude on behalf of the district and the district staff and the community, I want to thank you for your support or for recognizing May as Healthcare District Month. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ramona. And now we're going to go on to the Fair Housing Month and speak to one of those elected directors wearing another hat. And this proclamation is for Fair Housing Month, April 2021. Whereas the principle of fair housing is not only state and national law and policy, but a fundamental human concept and entitlement for all citizens. And whereas discrimination based on race, national origin, gender, disability, familial status, exclusion of minor children, religion, marital status, and sexual orientation is illegal in California. And whereas, as a community, we welcome all good neighbors, recognizing the contributions and richness tendered by a wide variety of young and old, male and female, people of all colors and ethnic backgrounds, religious traditions, etc. And whereas interested parties from both the private and public sectors will participate in a city, state, and national effort to promote fair housing. Now, therefore, be it resolved that I, Teresa Barrett, Mayor of Petaluma, along with the members of the City Council, do hereby declare the month of April 2021 as Fair Housing Month in the City of Petaluma, and urge all residents of our community to personally adopt the spirit of equal housing opportunity and adhere to the letter and character of the fair housing laws. And we have Elise Hempel here to accept this proclamation.
Thank you very much. And Madam Mayor and council members, as you know, we're very proud of the work that we do at Petaluma People Services Center and in our Fair Housing Department. Fair housing takes two. It takes a tenant, and a good tenant who understands their rights and rules, and it takes a good landlord. And landlord training is key to having successful relationship between the landlord and tenant. And so Petaluma People Services Center, since the day the city was mandated to provide fair housing, has been providing this program with an eye towards helping everybody in our community recognize their bias and then set that bias aside so that they can provide housing and live in a community that they consider that their own and represents themselves. So thank you for this honor. And again, if anybody has landlord or tenant questions, we're one of the few fair housing organizations that works directly with landlords too. You can certainly call Petaluma People Services Center and we're happy to help. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you both, Ramona and Elise, for all the work you do in this community. there's a good reason why there's that overlap between your groups and with us, with the council as well. So thank you so much. And we look forward to a good April and May with your projects going forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, so now we're going to go on to general public comment. And I will ask our city clerk if she has received any general public comment.
Madam Mayor, we have 10 public comments which have been posted to the website with the agenda packet.
And before I ask our moderator to ask people who are in attendance whether or not they want to speak on general public comment, I will say that I know I personally have received at least a score of letters, all on the same time. The city clerk has only received 10, indicates to me that the public really needs to understand that if you are wanting to have a comment made that is in the public record, you need to also send it to the city clerk so that it will be able to be put on our website. So with that, I will turn it over to our moderator to see if there's anybody in attendance today who wants to speak on general public comment items that are not on today's agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This, as you mentioned, is general public comment. So these are items, members of the public wishing to address items that are not on the current agenda. So we are going to start a 30-second timer just now. So members of the public wishing to speak in general public comment, please raise your hand in Zoom right now. So public comments are limited to up to 3 minutes per person. Depending on the number of persons wishing to address the council, time will be allocated in equal shares totaling no more than 20 minutes, subject to the council's discretion. Members of the public online and by phone, please raise your hand now, as I already mentioned, or push *9 by phone. Attendees will be muted when their time expires or when their comments have concluded, whichever comes first. And speakers are encouraged to be respectful. Threats of violence and obscenity are grounds for removal from this meeting. We currently have 12 members wishing to speak. So those that are unable to, or that come in afterwards, please send your comments to the city clerk at cityclerk@cityofpetaluma.org. So I am going to reset my timer here to 2 minutes, as long as I understand that that's the will of the council, to limit it to 2 minutes instead of 3. It's what we had done previously.
It's 20 minutes is our time, so 2 minutes is close to that, yes.
Okay. So with that, our first speaker is Paul McGavin, followed by John Hanania. So Paul, you may unmute yourself and begin your comments.
Thank you very much for the time. I'm going to be reading part of my March 23rd letter that I sent to Mayor Teresa Barrett and a number of the council members, as well as including and copying the planning commissioners. This is about the City of Petaluma's insufficient response to a Public Records Act request and other serious problems that are still not addressed. This is the second time I've formally written about this. The evidence is building in the City of Petaluma public record regarding the bad faith, lack of transparency, and darkroom dealings regarding telecom matters, and in particular, City Attorney Eric Danley's decision to hire a telecom law firm as an allegedly objective telecom advisor for the City of Petaluma. The evidence here and in the public record shows telecom law firm admits they are not objective. Telecom law firm's founder, Jonathan Kramer, said the following in an October 2020 YouTube webinar, quote, "I consider ourselves, telecom law firm, part of the wireless industry. So I'm giving you advice now to all of you people building towers. Don't use the term radiation. It's technically absolutely the most accurate word, and it scares the bejesus out of people. Please stop using the R word. The R word is the F word to us, because it makes our job in trying to get small cells approved much more difficult, because that's the trigger word. Use any other word, emissions, transmissions, any emissions you want, but don't use the R word," end quote. There's your objective advisor that you've hired to actually write our wireless ordinance. He's the one that brought the Jonathan Tripp May into the firm and handed him the managing director role. Both these gentlemen are managing directors of 2 firms, Mr. Danley. One of them is an allegedly objective law firm, not quite. The other is they have a firm that processes wireless telecommunications facilities. They make money from both. How you can possibly make comments saying there's not a conflict of interest is just amazingly obtuse. So if you say it again.
Thank you for your comments, Paul. Sorry I had to cut you off there. Your time was up. Next speaker is John Hanania, followed by Petaluma. John, you may unmute yourself and begin speaking. John, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Well, good afternoon or good evening. At the last meeting, I brought up the issue that whenever there's wrongdoing, it gets brushed under the rug, make it go away quick. And when there's a complaint, does not get taken care of. And for whatever reason, I actually heard the city manager speak in defense, which is she is 100%, well, I'll take that back, 150% your attention. And the only time I spoke to you back in July, the wrongdoing that's been taking place from your staff and the fire department. And for one reason or another, there was a letter was generated by whom I couldn't tell you, but it was sent by Chief Thompson to all the fire department staff that the wrongdoing cannot be taking place in the designated parking area or the parking lot. And every day is the same problem. So don't you dare tell me that you take care of problem. I think that your city manager is on a very, very big denial trip. I have sent several pictures to one of the city council members, which is I hope he can elaborate on when the city council comment comes on. I stop by twice a day, and I can assure you one thing for sure. That's not the only thing I'm going to be taking picture or making a video of to prove how wrong you are and how big of a major denial in. What makes a decent person a decent is the honesty and integrity, which is I don't believe your city manager seemed to have based on her action. Words can lie. Actions speak louder than words. And quit covering up for the staff. And the same goes to some of the city council members who don't have to seem to have a backbone to speak up.
Thank you for your comments, John. Next speaker is Paloma, followed by Josh Simmons. Paloma, you may unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Okay, so as I assume there will be many comments on the events of the last GPAC meeting, I'm going to play a short clip to provide context to everyone on the call so they can understand what we're all talking about. There's links to longer videos with full context in the emailed public comment by Josh Simmons that you can find a link to in the agenda. So I'm going to play that now.
Thank you. I appreciate the sort of the open dialogue we've got going on here. And all this focus on process. I wanted to pick up something that I heard a little earlier in the discussion around not taking votes, but doing like straw polls and things like that. I hear what you're saying around there being at least a perception of less politics and weird dynamics when you don't introduce formal votes into things. But there's a lot of history and scholarship that's gone into showing that when power structures or decision making is not made explicit, that it just becomes implicit. And, those things are going to happen one way or the other. And if we don't make it explicit, that just means that the power dynamics are that much more opaque to people. So while I appreciate that our aim is really to send some directionality, some direction to city council for consideration, I would ask that we really reconsider whether or not we have formal votes. Straw polls, I think we should be recording our decisions, even if we only understand that they're advising rather than binding.
Thank you, Josh. Give some instructions. Great, thanks for that, Aaron. Ileana, I think you had your hand up. Do you still have a question?
Yes, thank you. This question is for Matt. Can we decide as a group whether or not we vote rather than waiting for you to decide for us after this meeting?
So you want to vote on whether you vote?
Yes.
No, I think we're not going to be able to do that because we have been given clear direction from the city and the city council about how this committee was formed and its purpose. So, we will go back and talk about it and talk about how we can incorporate.
I'm sorry, the time has expired now. So thank you for your comments tonight, Paloma. Next speaker is Josh Simmons, followed by Aaron Chmielewski. Josh, you may unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Thank you. Good evening, City Council, City staff, fellow members of the public. My name is Josh Simmons. I'm a member of the Technology Advisory Committee, and most relevant for tonight, I'm also a member of the General Plan Advisory Committee. I'm speaking tonight because as a member of the GPAC, I have serious concerns about the process underway that's going to set the course of Petaluma for the next 20 to 30 years. At the inaugural meeting of the GPAC, staff were unprepared to meet the basic language access needs that many members of the community had been advocating for months, if not years. This, despite the city's stated goal that the GPAC is explicitly meant to engage a broad cross-section of the community, including those who have been historically left out of self-governance in Petaluma. Further, staff told us in no uncertain terms that our committee would not be allowed to vote to record our committee's decisions, unlike every other subordinate body of the City Council. Suffice it to say, myself and other GPAC members were unimpressed. We went from unimpressed to upset when we saw how paid staff, including consultant Matt Ramey, shut down and were non-committal in response to every request from committee members on these fronts. These left many of us with misgivings about the legitimacy of the GPAC and the general plan update process. We went from upset to horrified by the disparity in treatment of various GPAC members. Specifically, if you just heard that video or if you've seen it, you'll notice that I and other committee members who are white always got respectful responses from city staff. But when Ileana Madrigal spoke up, she was dismissed and worst, laughed at. There's really only one way to make sense of that pattern, and it's racism. In that moment, the city further eroded any trust that they might have built with Spanish-speaking members of our community. If the city is serious about engaging a representative cross-section of the community in the process of self-governance, it needs to earn that trust back. The city can start by recognizing and repairing the harm done to communities of color and issuing a public apology, including from Matt Ramey. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Josh. The next speaker is Aaron Chmielewski, followed by Sasha. Aaron, you may unmute yourself and begin speaking.
Hi, thank you so much. Erin Chmielewski, she, her, GPAC member. I'm speaking tonight regarding my disappointment of our first meeting of the GPAC. As my email to the mayor and council touched on several subjects, tonight I'll only be focusing on the most unacceptable one of the night, and that is the blatant disrespect of our GPAC member, Ileana Madrigal, by consultant Matt Ramey. The question she asked about our committee being able to vote to show that we believed we should gain a vote in this process was legitimate and should not have been met with laughter. This is one of the racist microaggressions that was directed at Ileana. I want to state that since this occurred in a public setting, that a formal apology should be given in the same setting, publicly. That's right. This is one of the first steps. Additionally, it's vital that the council take action to work with staff to reform the GPAC process. Yes, we've been involved in some of the things to change, but we need to see a dedication that will go beyond this. And like this process being changed will both then, for the public and the council, make a confident, more decisive recommendation based throughout the process recommendations made through the process are ones that would reflect the diversity of thought throughout this process. Thank you. There is and has been a lot of work put into this, but given the first meeting, I believe that if staff is unwilling to redevelop the current GPAC process, it should be dissolved by council and a new process be fully developed that will completely show inclusivity and equitability. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Aaron. Next speaker is Sasha, followed by Kendall Anderson. Sasha, you may unmute yourself and begin your comments.
Hi, I'm speaking tonight on behalf of our neighbors living outdoors in Petaluma, human beings with nowhere to go. First, I thank the city for allotting funds for a mobile shower unit. Please dispatch that unit immediately. Second, the encampment at Steamer Landing Park needs to be officially sanctioned and basic human services provided. Water, toilets, hand washing stations, and trash pickup are the very least we can do. Turn on the water spigot at Steamer Landing Park immediately. Myself, along with many other housed citizens of Petaluma, have been purchasing and distributing between 240 and 480 bottles of water each week since last November because the water fountains have been turned off and people have trouble finding places to fill water bottles. These compassionate people have also supplied food, tents, sleeping bags, clothing, and other necessities to the growing population of people in Petaluma that COTS is unable or unwilling to serve. Until the people with nowhere to go have a safe place to be, to sleep, to wash, to live, none of the underlying issues of mental illness or substance dependency can be addressed. People living outdoors who aren't struggling with those issues need to be able to sleep and bathe and wash clothes in order to obtain employment and housing. There are lots of examples of unhoused communities that work and are humane. And I'm certain that many housed citizens of Petaluma, like myself, want our city to be a shining example of compassion and holistic thinking. Make it so.
Thank you for your comments, Sasha. The next speaker is Kendall Anderson, followed by Elizabeth Escalante. Kendall, you may unmute yourself and begin your comments.
Hello, thank you so much for the opportunity to submit a public comment. My name is Kendall Anderson, and I'm a member of the public. I'd like to issue a statement in support of Ileana Madrigal. I was deeply disturbed to hear about the unacceptable way she was treated when speaking at a GPAC meeting on March 18th. For those unfamiliar with the incident, a city-hired consultant laughed at a question she asked. Both questions had to do with either language access or voting. It's clear that these actions were targeted consequence of Ileana's race and gender. This behavior is completely unacceptable and cannot go unacknowledged. People of color already have a difficulty participating in local affairs because of politics alone. The misconduct of the city consultant is further evidence that women and people of color are facing a great barrier and even downright hostility in participating in political affairs in Petaluma. 20% of the population in Petaluma is Hispanic or Latino. The city needs to focus on hiring and evaluating staff and elevating staff and consultants that are bicultural and have a deeper understanding of people of color. The community will not be adequately or justly represented until these issues are prioritized. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Kendall. Next speaker is Elizabeth Escalante, followed by Susan Oakes. Elizabeth, you may unmute yourself and begin your comments.
Good evening. My public comment is also in support of GPAC committee member Ileana Madrigal. Along with my written input and public comment, I wanted to also vocally say to how disgusted I was to view those videos and to listen to that clip once more, to hear that mocking and condescending laughter that came after a legitimate question that anybody would have asked. And then followed by more condescending remarks in sarcasm. So if our city is going to be serious about taking care of our communities of color, this needs to be addressed immediately. Like others said, we expect a public apology, even some reconsideration for a consultant who is competent, who knows how to be respectful, and especially given that we have one of the most valuable community leaders in this committee. And to hear and see how she was disrespected at this GPAC meeting is just downright appalling. Ileana is a community leader. She's a commissioner on the Commission of Human Rights and is also serving on this GPAC committee while also being a graduate student at University of San Francisco. She deserves so much more respect than what was displayed for her at that evening. So I implore you to make this right, or make this wrong or right, rather. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth. The next speaker is Susan Oakes, followed by Zaira. Susan, you may unmute yourself and begin your comments.
Thank you. Good evening. I'm speaking tonight on behalf of some of our houseless neighbors, those whose homes are a tent or a car. First, I thank the city for including funds in the budget for a mobile shower unit. This is vital for those going on job interviews, as well as good hygiene for anyone, and can contribute to better mental health. Is there a startup date, and how would it work? Is the info on the website? Next, I request that the water be turned on to the spigot at Steamer Landing Park. People depend on it, especially in warmer weather. Finally, I support, along with several friends, a sanctioned campground with basic services. While transitional and permanent housing are the long-term goal, in the immediate future, there needs to be some kind of safe sleeping space to meet the varied needs, in addition to what is provided by cots. There are cities with successful self-governed encampments, sometimes called mitigation sites, campgrounds, or villages, and we can do this as well. I ask the city and the council to consider these actions. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. The next speaker is Zaira, followed by Raisa Tinsley Green. Zaira, you may unmute yourself and begin your comments.
Hi, good evening, council members. I just want to go ahead and define microaggression: a statement, an action, or an incident regarding as an instance of indirect, subtle, or unintentional discrimination against members of a marginalized group, such as a racial or ethnic minority. What occurred to Ileana was definitely lack of cultural competency, and I hope that as the city pledged to end white supremacy, that they have a cultural, that you all can be culturally responsive. And you do have a tool, Tracy Webb, that again, I believe that every consultant that you hire, it must be a priority, culturally responsive and culturally aware. What occurred to Ileana is not the first time. I believe that our council member Healy as well directed the same subtle microaggression comment, asking me where I lived nowadays. But due to Mike Healy, council member, is unaware of the safety of BIPOC members. So I hope that you commit to language justice, just as you pledged to commit to root out white supremacy and end it. So this is a great opportunity for the city to act. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Zaira. Next speaker is Risa Tinsley Green, followed by M. Ann Sullivan, who will be our last speaker. Risa, you may unmute yourself and begin your comments.
Racist microaggressions like those demonstrated in the GPAC meeting are simply unacceptable. The GPAC committee's responsibilities will affect the framework of our town decades into the future, and beginning this journey with exclusion and discrimination is frankly shameful and cannot be allowed to continue. We demand that the council and Matt Rimey issue a formal public apology, and if he will not comply and change his behavior, consider terminating its contract with consultant Matt Rimey and reevaluate the process of this committee and others to ensure all of our governmental processes are representative and inclusive to everyone. We also demand that the city commits to language access improvements, including interpreters, for City Council, Planning Commission, and GPAC meetings, so that non-English speakers can meaningfully participate in decisions that impact their lives in the same way as English speakers. Treating tools that grant people their basic rights to participation in local government as inconveniences and laughing at questions about language access and voting processes is sending a clear message that this council does not care about accessibility and true representation. Please recognize these concerning issues occurring in the committees you oversee, apologize to the communities you continually neglect, and reevaluate your actions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. The next speaker is M. Ann Sullivan. So, M. Ann Sullivan, you may unmute yourself and begin your comments.
Yes, good evening. My comment is in regard to our urban tree canopy. Our new nonprofit tree group was treated to a presentation that focused on the lack of street trees on our two major approaches to the historic downtown, Petaluma Boulevard South and Washington Street. The presentation showed an aerial view of those two thoroughfares and contrasted them with, of all things, the Champs-Élysées in Paris, which is a promenade lined with double rows of elm trees on each side. In comparison, our two streets were shown to be almost entirely denuded of vegetation and contained almost no trees. The speaker described our two thoroughfares as ghastly. The Champs-Élysées is 1.2 miles in length and sees 84,000 cars per day. Washington is less than 1 mile and sees 24,000 cars per day. So I reached out to the city of Palo Alto, who has 100% tree canopy cover, and I spoke with their public works department fellow, and he said that, in short, trees are one of the most fiscally sound infrastructure investments, that scientific studies conclude that trees benefit roads by shading, which moderates temperature extremes, results in extended lifespan for asphalt and less cracking, that motorists are calmer and drive at slower average speeds, that businesses attract more customers who stay longer, attribute greater quality to the products, and spend more time because of trees and landscaping. Bicyclists and pedestrians are more likely to use shaded routes to access local parks, playgrounds, libraries, and other destinations, resulting in less car trips. So my request is that we meet our climate action goals by treeing out our city, and especially these routes that are heat islands, that would more likely encourage people to bike and walk if we had this tree cover. Thank you kindly.
Thank you for your comments, and thank you everybody tonight for your public comments. Madam Mayor, those were all the hands that were raised at the end of our timer. To those that still have their hands up, please send your comments to cityclerk@cityofpetaluma.org. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. And with that, we will go to council comment. And we will start with Mr. Healy.
Never quite know where you're going to start, Madam Mayor. That's fine. So 2 things to report on tonight. The Water Advisory Committee met this morning. The state of the reservoirs is not good. Currently, Lake Mendocino is whole feet, so its water supply pool is at 41%, and that is considered dire, especially for users on the upper Russian River. Lake Sonoma is a little bit better. It's at 154,000 acre feet, which is 63% of the water supply pool. We are anticipating at this point that there will be a need for mandatory conservation, and the water shortage allocation methodology will be kicking in this summer. It looks like a 4-month period, July through October, where each of the contractors, including Petaluma, will have their allocations from the water agency cut back substantially. And this is, just to give some context to this, our residents and residents around the region have done a great job of incorporating water conservation into their daily lives over the last several years. So longer serving council members may be aware that we have a 20% by 2020 reduction mandate from the state of California. I believe that was from 2013 or 2014 baseline. Our region has already achieved 32% on that. And so what we're starting to see is more demand hardening than we have experienced in the past. So it's going to be a real challenge on messaging and getting people to increase conservation this summer to preserve the water in Lake Sonoma so that we can get through this. And then secondly, I wanted to report on a couple of meetings I had where the same issue came up. One was a Zoom meeting with Senator Dodd, which Councilman Proske also participated in, and his bill, SB 556, came up. I intend to raise this issue again when we get to the agenda for the next meeting. So I think this is probably something that we want to do a 7-signature letter on. I believe the entire council saw an email from Nancy Hall Bennett, but this has to do with Senator Dodd's bill that would require cities such as ours to allow cell phone installations on utility poles and light poles, which directly contradicts a resolution or an ordinance that we passed a year or two ago. I'm happy to talk on that in a little bit more detail when we get to the future agenda. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And Councilmember McDonald.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I did just want to note that we have a firm audience tonight. We have over 40 people in attendance from the public. So again, Petaluma is engaged. I did want to note that many of the council attended a countywide press conference, and perhaps others will have other things to say about this. It was regarding racism on March 22nd. And basically the story there was everyone that's a person of color has a racism story. It doesn't matter how well integrated they are into a community. They see racism. It's real. It's sobering to hear all the stories. I mean, the speakers on this particular one were the heads of all of our educational institutions, Sonoma State, Santa Rosa JC, Santa Rosa City Schools, the largest ones, and all had stories of racism, recent racism, not childhood experiences. And it's just shocking. And again, as I attended with many of the other city council people, anti-Asian racism candlelight vigil at Walnut Park, one message I heard loud and clear is that when a white person here's an example of racism and violence, they're shocked. When a person of color hears this, they're not shocked. It's their reality. I think it's a continuing issue in Petaluma we need to keep in mind. On my assignments, well, the main assignment consuming me these days is our homeless situation in the Continuum of Care Board. And we met on March 22nd. There was additional funding to be distributed to different groups throughout the county. It's amazing how many groups, nonprofits, providers are actually trying to address homelessness within our county. Second, on 24th, we met again, and there were policy decisions being made at that time. One of the key ones that everyone should know about is the modifications to the Housing First model. It sets up a coordinated entry system, so the pathway for unsheltered people into shelter. And the modification is the local jurisdictions will have more authority in the admissions. It won't go through a central clearinghouse at the county. COTS will have more discretion right locally. And I think that'll be a big improvement. And certainly all of the shelters in the county thought that would be a big improvement. Additionally, on this topic, there's a change in executive director of the staffing of that agency. And the cities have an ad hoc body, one member from each city council, and they've written to the county expressing their interest, our interest in how the new executive director is found and what skills they bring to this process. We meet again this week on April 7th. So it's just a very busy time there. In addition, the county has received a report from KPMG, large consulting firm, regarding homelessness in our county and the best ways to address it. And that information should be coming to our city and out in the community soon. It goes before the Board of Supervisors on April 20th. Separately, I wanted to mention a note of thanks to staff for the successful effort to get the Petaluma Creamery into compliance with all the issues. I know it was a huge issue and it was really important to resolve. And it doesn't hurt to have all those back debts paid to the city. So good work to staff on that. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember King.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Since we last met, both of my committee assignments did meet. Sonoma Clean Power met last week. Couple of key items we discussed. That there'll be a request out to commercial and municipal Sonoma Clean Power customers to utilize their sites for potential projects. So those, I'd like to see the word get out on that to for the commercial sites, but also see if the city can take advantage of what is coming forth from Sonoma Clean Power as we expand both our solar panel arrays on city property as we go forward and other potential sources of energy. This is potentially, and I have to say potentially, a prospect for the city to look at as one of the options for that expansion. One of the other main points of discussion was dealing with our Evergreen portfolio as Evergreen customers expand, both with our city and the city of Santa Rosa coming on board. There was some concern and on the part of the staff and the board about trying to diversify some of our energy sources. Right now, Evergreen is solar and geothermal, largely for purposes of kind of the reality of solar at night. But we're looking toward that. The final plan for the local resource plan will be put in for the next 2 years at our next meeting. And there is a lot of positive news on the area of battery storage coming forward for electricity, and that's part of the plan as well. Although this was not at the meeting, as a board member, I was able to get a tour of the Advanced Energy Center in downtown Santa Rosa, which is not opened yet. It's in the process of getting its final permitting through the city of Santa Rosa, but it's very near to be opened. And it is a fascinating center, which has different sections which provide visual explanations and options on folks that can come in and see what they can do to their homes, their businesses, for transportation. Just to give one example, they had induction stovetops and gave an example how those work. But I would urge my colleagues and the public, when it becomes open to the public, to take the tour. I will let everyone know when public tours are going to be happening, because it can give you some good ideas of what you can do in your own home, your own businesses, and possibly what we can do as a municipality. So fairly easy to get to. My other committee assignment, Transit, met also on Thursday. I was asked to relay that we had a discussion on changes to the website, which includes adding a link to the bylaws, to the enabling legislation, some translation services, and also something that lists the terms of the members of the committee when they are done, when they are termed out, and that type of thing. There was some discussion about bringing all that back to the council, but after further discussion, it was pretty clear that that's not necessary. But the members of the committee, or some of the members of the committee, wished that I would address that with you. We also had a fairly busy agenda in terms of approving or recommending that the council approve certain grant applications for a new paratransit van, a fixed route bus, as well as getting some TDA funding and other grants. So all of that I expect to be on our agenda fairly soon. I don't know exactly what the timing of that is, but I imagine it's pretty quick. So those are my committee assignments. I also attended the press conference that was called by AAPI leaders, and I won't repeat what Councilmember McDonald said, but I certainly concur. The press conference was sobering and hard to listen to, quite frankly, in a sense that it, as Councilmember McDonald noted, had people that are in positions of significant power describing impacts on their lives of racism, and it was very poignant. It was also on another level fairly hopeful, in that there was a definite commitment for all of us to work together as a community to address this and try to deal with it individually and as municipal leaders and as citizens. So I came away with that, with a good education, and as well as a little bit of hope that we can continue to work on this. And I also attended the vigil that was mentioned as well, which was about a week, 10 days ago. And I would assume, I'm assuming, but I would imagine that the city manager may be addressing some of the issues raised on general public comment. So I will hold off and allow that to occur. But I hope we have some of that addressed. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Vice Mayor Barnacle.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have had several check-ins with my appointments, so I'll go through those first and then talk about a few other things that are timely. So I had the Ag and Open Space Advisory Committee. There's some unfortunate news that the ASAP matching grant, which was to help farmers during COVID, there's some legal hiccups in that they aren't able to actually fulfill the applications that came in for that. It's unfortunate, but they're going to be turning their attention now toward supporting them as part of implementing the Vital Lands Initiative. I was excited to join the ad hoc team that does on-site visits for the Vital Lands Acquisition Program. So I get to go and fall in love with the sites that we'll be preserving and protecting for generations to come. I'm really excited to get out and go see parts of Sonoma County that I otherwise wouldn't. Parks and Rec, we met. We got a chance to have a presentation on the climate emergency framework and also talk about our commemorative bench program. Had a series of different emails come in from members of the community about Parks and Rec stuff, some of which I know everybody saw here about the skate park from Mary Beth Leland. Also seen some stuff from Friends of the Petaluma River, but no shortage of interest in parks projects around the community. Had a meeting with our hotel owners. That was a lovely meeting. I didn't know that they had a sort of a local industry group, but it was great to meet them and hear about their concerns and hear about how they've adapted to COVID and how they're planning to come out. They made very clear that this is not the time to try and increase our transit occupancy tax. And I let them know that I haven't heard of anything, but it was certainly a concern of theirs that they expressed. Was really excited to see the American Jobs Plan come out from our president, and relevant to us locally is the focus on ending subsidies for fossil fuel and creating subsidies for electric. I think that applies to the way we spend here locally and our programming of funds through things like the Community Development Block Grant. I know that's coming, and I want to make sure that that we make sure we cap any funding for fossil fuels in those types of programs. Also really appreciated the focus on creating good quality jobs and government procurement as being leaders on climate. To the comments about racism, I also attended the press conference. I'm not going to repeat those comments, but one of the things that I think that I would like to see the city do is on our social media accounts to actively practice anti-racism. Just a couple of weeks ago, I found a post from the PPD that was taking a picture with a Latinx community member who was vending food, and there was a blatantly racist comment on there. And I just think that if someone comes onto a city government social media site and makes a comment that is racist or bigoted in any sort of way, it should be the governing body that condemns that comment and makes sure that we show that we're standing with with the oppressed in that situation. I made a comment, but I think that it's really important that as we go through this, that we stand up to any sort of hatred like that as the governing body and as the government. I had following on one of the comments from Councilmember Healy around water. I'm just wondering at what point we start implementing, more mandated measures. I had a call from a constituent today, very concerned about water. And, I'm just wondering when we stop telling people they can irrigate their lawns and, sorry, but, this is a bigger situation. I'd like to have some follow-up on the water at Steamer Landing Park, because that is an issue, and a lot of the trash that's there is from people who are delivering water to the people, and they wouldn't have to deliver water if they had a water fountain. So I'd like to have a follow-up on that. And then to the comments about the GPAC, I was troubled by some of it. I was troubled by some of the things that I heard in those videos. One of the comments that came from someone who didn't provide any public comment on that was, and it was someone on the committee, said, well, it's a powerless committee, and people don't understand what the point is. But the fact that someone feels that it's a powerless committee is a problem, and I don't want that to be the case. I don't recall the city council ever giving any direction to the GPAC consultant, so I would encourage him to check where he's getting his information on that. And I would, in general, as a fallout from that, I would like to see a cost and a proposal for basically providing everything in translation services for every public meeting. I think that that's a near-term action that we should at least look at and consider the cost of, and I hope that we can add that to an upcoming council meeting. And that'll do it for my updates tonight.
Thank you very much. And Councilmember Fisher.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I do want to report on two meetings I've had since our last meeting. First of all, the Planning Commission met on March 23rd. We had two projects before us, both site plan and architectural review projects. One was the Doherty residence, which is off of 6th Street. It's that 1 acre site that's part of the Woodbridge subdivision. We saw the house next door before this body. We did approve it, and I believe I saw today that it was actually being appealed, so it'll be coming to us. And we approved the Riverview Apartments, which is on Casa Grande Boulevard. It's right next to the Rocky Memorial Dog Park on, I think it's about 15 acres, but 264 units on an R5 zone, so essentially allowed by right. And then we finally had the third meeting of the VMT TAC, which stands for the Vehicle Miles Traveled Technical Advisory Committee. And the reason for the committee was really to determine changes we need to make to our CEQA process, which is the California Environmental Quality Act, all these acronyms. But what changes we need to make to process our projects using VMT and not using LOS. So we finalized our review of the parameters, looking at what the thresholds might be, the screening and the mitigation, so that that can then come before the Planning Commission and ultimately to here at the City Council. I think that's all I have. And I do look forward to the city manager's comments on the public comment. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Posake.
Thank you, Mayor. I did not have a Climate Action Commission meeting since our last meeting, but we did have a meeting of a ad hoc committee on engagement where we discussed a schedule of key themes and possible speakers for the remainder of the year's meetings of the Climate Action Commission. And I would just put forward for anyone who's interested that at the next meeting, which will be this Thursday, April 8th, we will hear from Donnie Oliveira, who is the Deputy Director at the Portland Bureau of Planning and Sustainability. He's going to be talking about successes that he's been involved with from the standpoint of community engagement. Also had a youth commission meeting where we discussed again improvements to the website the youth have been working on, and voting is now underway for some winners in the art show project. There were 12 entrants in 3 categories, so there'll be 3 winners, I believe, later this week in this youth commission art show project. At the Sonoma County Health Action meeting, a lot of, the redesign of the Health Action Commission is about to beginning again with outreach for engagement of stakeholders. And I suppose the next most important thing would be that was announced, and some nice graphs shown of the fact that our COVID cases are decreased to the lowest point since July 1 of last year. So that's really good news. And then the CHIPA affiliated group for the Petaluma Tobacco-Free Sonoma County group continues to work on the tobacco retail license, which affects our vaping as well. Finally, personally, I cringe every time I hear the word microaggression, because I think that in the instant that it occurs, that these are often, if you total up the damage to both the victim and those of us that are trying hard to be better anti-racists, that damage is as large, at least instantaneously, as in any of our institutional racism situations. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so I will give my committee reports first, and that is, first was the Bay Area Air Quality Management District Stationary Source and Climate Protection Committee met, and the only reason I'm really bringing this up is that it is that group that has recommended very strict standards for refinery cracker emissions. And I know that we're not talking, we're talking about cracking oil atoms, and it's called Rule 6-5. And the only reason I'm bringing it up is that I expect that many people will be getting lobbied to bring pressure on the Air District not to take the position that the committee has recommended, which is to bring us into, bring the refineries into compliance for 2030 carbon neutrality in our state. And so it's very interesting to me. This will not even be voted on until June. And there's already very serious action going on against this. So I just bring this up as something that is going on and that we all need to be aware of. The Bay Area Regional Collaborative, which is a consortium of regional groups such as Transportation Corporation, the Air District, and the Bay Conservation, BCDC, is still also met, and they are working toward a coordinated regional response to resiliency. So again, wanting to have the entire 9 Bay Area counties working in the same direction, so that one county or area isn't doing something that's counter to what other counties are doing. So it's actually a very good effort not to have people going and working against one another. I was also in attendance at the March 22nd countywide press conference, and I was glad to see that people from Petaluma were able to get there, because it was a pretty late minute thing, so we all didn't have room in our schedules to attend, but it was, as was reported, a pretty eye-opening list of conversations by the people who spoke. And I was very happy that that group chose Petaluma and Walnut Park to have the only AAPI vigil that came out of that in Petaluma. And it was, I attended it. It's actually one of the very first public things I have done since we're starting to emerge from COVID lockdown. And there were I would say about 100 people in attendance. So I was very happy to see that, and especially including many of our council members. I also had my Zone 2A meeting, which is the flood management of the Petaluma River. And there was a very interesting discussion about Upper Petaluma River watershed water retention projects. And these are important, and I'm really happy to say that we have great representation of our city staff with Gina Benedetti-Petnick there. And you know, we, from our last general plan, developed a flood model called XP Swim, and that has been being updated and integrated with the county newer model, which will integrate our model with the Upper Petaluma River model. So for flooding, we will be able to see the entire watershed and how it comes down and affects our city. And the timing couldn't be better, given that we're now working on updating our general plan. So this is very good news for us, I believe, and I'm very interested in seeing how that integration works. I also was able to attend in real time the third meeting that Councilmember Fisher referred to of the VMT TAC. And I just wanted to say that I was absolutely impressed with the quality of the discussion that went on, and between the people on the TAC, the interaction with staff. And I really, really appreciated the technical support that had interactive surveys so that people could weigh in on things and bring the dialogue farther. So I really, really want to say that everybody involved, great job, and thank you, because I think this is a really important measurement that we're going to really need going forward. So all of you putting in your time, it's appreciated. Just on a follow-up to what we heard in public comment, I do want to hear what our city manager has to say about this, but you know, I couldn't help thinking about what Elise Hempel said when she was receiving the proclamation for fair housing in regards to what was being said about the general plan group incident. And Elise was saying that they work with landlords and with tenants, and that they need to reach out and teach each other how to be, you know, good at what you do. And I really think that this is a situation that is not just in need of an apology, but it is something that is going to have to be an ongoing process, because I do not believe that what happened was intentional, but I do, and actually Zyra's of microaggression brings up the fact that it's not necessarily intentional. So that if it isn't intentional, then an apology is essential, but it may not be enough. And so I really do think that we want to be looking at how are we going to make this committee go forward in the way that we all had hoped, and go forward that in a way that supports the people who are giving their time and expertise to our community. So in that vein, I would say that we don't have a committee or commission that we're not asking people to vote on things, because we do want to know how the people feel about what's being suggested. We want those votes to be reflected in their recommendations to us, the council. That's why they're doing that work. And however that's done, it needs to get done. And the access to language, I do think several people have brought that up, both in public comment, and I believe the vice mayor did as well. And I know that our city is very well aware of this. So I would like to get some kind of update on how we can make that go forward faster. And my last comment is, Mr. Healy brought up some very, very serious and concerning statistics about our water situation. And my immediate thought when I was listening to when he said that was to think back at what was being asked in general public comment about steamer landing. And how we turn on water is going to have to be a very considered discussion. And I would think that we would really need to have a conversation among our staff with people at COTS and figure out how we go forward in a way that is really addressing our very dire situation, which we are going to have to make some very real decisions about in the near future. So with that, I'm sorry for being so long-winded, and I will ask our city manager to please comment.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, council members, for your thoughtful comments about public comment. I would say that after our first meeting of the GPAC meeting was definitely a watershed moment for staff, that we realized that we truly do need to recalibrate and do better for our community. After the initial feedback we received regarding the meeting, we immediately recalibrated, took action to address the concerns raised at the meeting, including setting up live translation services, followed up with the GPAC members, created an engagement working group of the GPAC, and the consultant followed up directly with Ms. Madrigal. We are deeply sorry for any misstatements or inappropriate reactions during the meeting that caused pain and feelings of marginalization for anyone on the committee and in attendance. It was unacceptable and will not reoccur. While that was not the intention of either city staff or our consultant team, we recognize that the damage created by this incident, especially as we are developing new relationships, can be long lasting, and we are committed to ensuring that everyone who participates will be listened to and responded to with dignity and respect. We're committed to continuously improving how we manage our meetings and engage our community to ensure everyone feels safe and heard and can participate freely, which has been our hope since the beginning, since we launched this effort. So to do this, we're making immediate changes to our meeting format that we'll hope will move us closer to where we want to be. And that includes, as I mentioned, the live translation for each meeting. And these translated videos will be recorded and uploaded to our website, and will be promoted to our Latinx community. We're working with our Latinx community to update our outreach protocols to be sure they effectively meet the needs of our monolingual community members. We'll provide many ways for community members, committee members to weigh in on discussions in a way that provides a safe space for ideas, and we'll continue to adjust as needed to ensure the process works for everyone. And despite this difficult start, we have seen our consultants demonstrate professionalism, creativity, thoughtfulness, and sensitivity throughout our initial planning phase, and they have been dedicated to ensuring a robust and meaningful general plan process for our entire community. Matter of fact, among the top reasons we chose Ramey and Associates is due to their commitment and demonstration of inclusivity, racial justice, and social equity in their previous planning efforts. We asked for the opportunity to have them demonstrate that cultural competency to the community moving forward. Ultimately, your staff is accountable for any missteps or failings in this process. And we will take the opportunity at the next GPAC meeting to publicly apologize to committee member Madrigal. And as I mentioned earlier, the consultant has directly reached out to Ms. Madrigal as well. We hope that this effort is one of many ways we will build trust and understanding between our city and our diverse community, and that we can move forward and work together with purpose and unity in this extraordinary process that we've initiated. A couple other comments raised by Vice Mayor Barnacle, but to the entire council and community. The staff is and has been meeting on conservation strategies. We recognize that this is going to be an extraordinary year, not unlike that of 1977, 1978, and maybe even more severe. So we'll be coming back to council with that strategy. And I think that's it. So thank you very much for the time and appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to the approval of minutes. We have minutes for July 20th, 2020, July 27th, 2020, and September 14th, 2020. Are there any corrections or there was a typo that was pointed out, and if I don't see any hands up, we will accept the minutes as submitted. Thank you. And now we will move to the proposed agenda, and I believe Mr. Healy had something he wanted to bring up for that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So I would move approval of the tentative agenda in the packet with the addition of a 7-signature letter opposing Senate Bill 556. Based on the template provided by Nancy Hall Bennett, and I'd be happy to work with staff in refining that because there's some nuances that I'd like to share. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fisher and then City Manager.
I was going to offer a second to that motion.
City Manager.
I just wanted to comment that staff has been working on that letter, so thank you, Councilmember Healy, and would love your take on that, and we will definitely have that ready for the next council meeting.
Okay, thank you very much. And so we have a motion by Healy and a second by Fisher, and we will have a roll call vote.
Barrett?
Yes.
Barnacle?
Yes.
Fisher?
Yes.
Healy?
Yes.
King?
Yes.
McDonald?
Yes.
Kosike?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. And now we're on to the consent calendar. Is there anyone who would like to pull anything from the consent calendar? I see Vice Mayor Barnacle's hand is up.
Yes, I'd like to pull 3E, please.
Thank you. And Councilmember Kosike?
Would also like to pull 3E. Thank you.
Okay, so 3E has been removed from the consent calendar. Is there anyone who'd like to remove anything else? Not seeing any other hands up. I will ask our city clerk if she's received any items from the public on any consent item.
Madam Mayor, we received 5 public comments for item 3E. No other comments on the consent calendar.
Okay, thank you. So then we will go with our moderator to see if there's anyone in the public who'd like to speak to the consent items. I guess if they want to speak to 3E, this is an okay time for them to do that too, because then we can vote for that later.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of the public wishing to speak on the items on the consent calendar, please raise your hands and you'll be called on in turn. I see several hands up, so I'm going to share my screen and reset the timer to 3 minutes. There we go. First speaker is Ben Peters, followed by Barry Busewitz. So Ben, you may unmute yourself and begin your comments.
Good evening, everyone. Item 3E and 3F. So 3E is where the city is going to be spending many millions of dollars on road slurry. And in the staff report, it mentions some positive aspects of biking and active transportation. Yet as a member of the public, I struggle to see the direct connection between the spending on road slurry and the lack of spending on much needed bike and pedestrian infrastructure. And so knowing how noxious of a substance road slurry is and the application of it, I think it's important for us to stop our business as usual activities. And when dedicating money to go to roads infrastructure, like slurry sealing, we should allocate money to alternative forms of transportation. I'd like to thank Councilmember McDonnell for his commentary in the Argus about the need for individual actions as well as the actions of our government. It may surprise some to learn that the notion of a carbon footprint was actually created by British Petroleum in the early 2000s to shift accountability away from the corporations producing emissions to individual actions. And so recognizing the difficulty and importance of individual actions, that rests on our government stepping up and saying no more business as usual. So if we want to stop our modest actions, let's start here with a simple vote. That vote being no more road slurry without actual quality active transportation projects. I'm sure there'll be many more eloquent comments on 3E. Very briefly on 3F, for those 40 members of the public listening and those many listening after this recording, recognize that while tax measure monies are spent on important projects, no water efficiency projects were included. There's no irrigation controllers, there's no upgrades to our recycled water. And so we need to keep a vigilant eye on how we spend our dollars. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Ben. Next speaker is Barry Busewitz, followed by Nicholas. Barry, you may unmute yourself and begin your comments. Are you there, Barry?
Yeah, I'm here. Thank you, Patrick. I have an auxiliary mic. And good evening, Madam Mayor, council members, staff, and onlookers and other participants. It's a rare treat for me to see a city council meeting because I usually teach on Monday nights. This has been so informative tonight. I'm sorry I missed the earlier public comment, but I do have comments on 3E. And I think that the one thing I'm tuned in on and aware of is that the need to have a narrower, or the benefit of having 10-foot wide lanes, somewhat narrow lanes that are perfectly safe according to code, and that make streets feel safer and calmer for our pedestrians, bicycle riders, and other people who use the infrastructure. And that's my comment, and I hope you will direct the city accordingly. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments tonight, Barry. Next speaker is Jerry Wilkinson, followed by Taryn Obaid. So Jerry, you may unmute yourself and begin your comments.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, staff. My name is Jerry Wilkinson. I am the newest member of your PBAC committee, and I thank you for that. I'm also Vice President of Petaluma Wheelman Cycle Club and a pretty regular cyclist myself. So as that, I have a representative interest in seeing these roads that you're talking about. I'd love to see the width, the travel width narrow to 10 feet, and to see striping for. I think it's relatively simple fix for that, and certainly it certainly fits with the climate action goals that you have on the council as far as to encourage more bike and pedestrian travel. I think we all recognize a need for that. It helps reduce the greenhouse gases, and it really is just a significant opportunity. You're going to do something, add that in there, put that in there. It also sets a valuable precedent for any future road work that is done. So we're talking about reducing vehicle traffic. This is a perfect opportunity to help in that goal. So I thank you, and that's it.
Thank you, Jerry, for your comments. The next speaker is Taryn Obaid. So Taryn, you may unmute yourself and begin your comments.
Hi, thank you. Good evening. Thank you for City Council for paying attention, or rather interest in protecting our city's small cell ordinance with regards to the SB 556. It's really great to hear that you're going to submit a letter of opposition to that. I just wanted to point out, and I don't know if this information is completely accurate because I'm not totally versed on Sacramento politics, but I did want to point out that according to the information that I've been getting, the hearing on SB 556 is on April 19th. And that is the day of our next city council meeting.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, this is the mayor speaking. Taryn, this is only for items that are on the consent calendar at this point. This is not for items that are not on the agenda. So this is not the time that we can be talking about SB 556. So if you want to submit your question, you could do that through email or phone one of us. But this is not that time.
Okay, because the deadline is next Wednesday for the letter. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next speaker is Nicholas. Nicholas, you may unmute yourself and begin your comments.
Hello, thank you, everybody. I live downtown in West Petaluma, and I'm trying to become an avid cyclist. And I'd just like to ask that the council consider that when they're doing the road slurry and spending the $2.2 million and hopefully doing some repaint on that we include some more bike lanes and some more pedestrian signs and visibility. I've almost been hit trying to cross the Boulevard South several times, as well as my dogs. Pedestrians don't want to stop. Having like a big bright light kind of helps. I know that doesn't have anything to do with the slurry, but when you're spending money, just consider that, as well as those bike lanes. I feel like I take my life into my own hands every time I try and go down Washington. It's literally terrifying, and I just don't do it anymore. But I'd like to. It's important to get across town. Thank you so much for all your service.
Thank you for those comments, Nicholas. The next speaker is Veronica O. Veronica, you may unmute yourself and begin your comments.
Good evening, Council, Mayor Barrett. I just wanted to say I'm an avid bicyclist, and it really concerns me that item 3E did not allude to any active transportation supporting efforts. If we're really serious about reaching our 2030 goals, we need to take all efforts, both in construction and restoration, to increase people's ability to walk and bicycle in our city. End of. All efforts. We don't have a lot of time. And if we're going to be spending the type of money that we're talking in this item, I think one needs to actually ask the question, when are we going to start? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments, Veronica. And Madam Mayor, that's all the hands up, so I will turn it back to you.
Thank you very much. Close public comment on the consent calendar items and bring it back to the council. Can we get a motion for the consent calendar items except for item E? And I see Councilmember McDonald has his hand up.
I'd like to motion the consent calendar except for item E, and then make a little comment on F there. I see that in our item F, McDowell improvements, there's outreach initiatives, and this outreach has to be completed with the public before the design is complete. And I think that's a very aggressive schedule. It'll have to get busy right away to engage the public in what kind of active transportation goes on McDowell and that stretch from Corona to North McDowell. And then I see that there's discussion of it being staged. I hope we hear lots more about how we get it into one stage instead of separate stages. The active transportation is super key on item F there. That's the motion.
Okay, thank you. So the motion is to move forward items 3A, B, C, D, F, G, H, and I. And then there was comment on F. So is there a second for that? Second from Councilmember Posake. Did you have something you wanted to say about anything else on the consent calendar except E? Okay, so with that, can we have a roll call vote, City Clerk?
Barrett,
Yes.
Barnacle,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Ely,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
Posake.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. And now, Councilmember Posake and Vice Mayor Barnacle, you both wanted to pull this item. I see the Vice Mayor has his hand up, so you can go first, and then Dr. Posake can follow you.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the speakers hit it on some of my issues. I don't see the bike ped improvements in particular. I'm concerned about the bicycle improvements. It's, you know, I don't see how this is. We're spending $2 million on an area that is our largest source of greenhouse gas emissions, and we are a city that has major safety issues for cyclists. And I don't see how we're doing anything about the inequities of people who don't have the means to own cars. And I don't see how we're doing anything that's going to actually reduce our emissions. And the staff report just didn't do it for me on those. And I, like Mr. Peters' comment, I appreciated Councilmember McDonald's op-ed in the Argus last week about personal choice and the importance of that. But we can't expect people to take their life into their own hands to save the climate. And that's on us. That's what the government can do. And when I think about the way that we're spending our money, it is incredibly important that when we're looking at transportation and the scarce funding that we have available for transportation, that we consider the opportunity costs and not just the projects. Like I looked back and I was alerted that this was as part of a March 15th agenda item. It was one bullet, and I really, it didn't hit me that this was going to come back and be $2.2 million of funding that is not going to improve safety, reduce greenhouse gas emissions, improve equity in our city, or at least I can't tell that it is in the staff report. And I'm the one who asked the question to staff. Anytime we're looking at transportation stuff, I'm going to want to see a map, and I'm going to want to see the affordable housing location of affordable housing projects in our city. I'm going to want to see the location of schools in our city, because those are two areas where we can basically assess equity and safety issues right there. And I just, you know, I read the March 15th report. It said the SB1 funds can be reprogrammed as priorities change. So it seems like that is possible. I read up on SB1. I haven't seen anything that says we can't focus on bike ped infrastructure. So I'm just not seeing why, knowing what we know now, knowing that climate and equity are some of our top priorities, why this project? And if someone can shed some light on that. But I've heard council members talk about not wanting to check boxes on climate. And I want to make sure that we're not, because this is where we ultimately say.
Thank you. Councilmember Pusakay, and then Councilmember King and McDonald.
Yes, I thank Councilmember Barnacle for covering just about everything that I would have to say in that regard. As I read item 3E, I just needed more information about, I'm sure there is more to be said about what we plan to do with those projects, but I needed to know more in order to be supportive. As Councilmember Barnacle has said, and as one of our commenters said this evening, it's dangerous out there when you ride your bike, and it's not that I think that every little residential end of court block needs to have a bike lane, but I think we need to be sure that we're thinking about what type of bike infrastructure we can add to every little project we do. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember King.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have a couple of questions for staff on this, and so I'll just lay them all out. They're not, they're probably inter type questions, interrelated questions. One is, to see if you can address some of the comments made by the public commenters about bike lanes as well as council members, but there were comments about the 10-foot width, and my question really deals with how does that? It seems like that's fine for automobiles, but what about delivery trucks, garbage trucks, moving vans on some of these larger streets? And so I have some questions about that, since bicycles and cars are not the only thing that go on our streets and nothing is going to change there. So I kind of would like to know what staff's comments were there, and it was raised, in some of the letters that were sent to us in advance. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Councilmember McDonald and Healy before we go to staff for a response.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I don't really want to design the streets right here at the City Council. I think it'd be wise of us to have clear guidelines. I think staff has not shown us the clear guidelines yet that reflect council's concerns, council's climate concerns especially. Certainly in my Argus piece, which has been referenced, and the only reason I bring it up is that the city has a role. The city has to take the bold or modest actions, and the public has a role and needs to join in. Neither one can solve issues without the other party. But as an avid cyclist in town and out of town, and as our PBAC liaison, I'm thinking we need to empower PBAC even more than we do. I mean, right now, the PBAC feels stifled that they haven't been able to do a bicycle master plan update, that hasn't risen to the top of the funding lists, though with our Measure U money, it probably will in this coming year. But we haven't been able to execute on any bicycle boulevard, though the ideas have been floated out there. And we haven't been able to execute on any signage, though there's a great need for signage around town. So as we head into goals season, I would like to see some of this infrastructure guidelines in our goals so that each street project comes up, staff already understands the concepts that council's behind and is able to communicate that they've reviewed under those guidelines. Also, PBAC is working, or the city is working under new ideas here. Sure, we want to get people out of their cars and onto bicycle and walking, both, but what exactly is the bicycle community look like? Is it the commuter you take out of a car who dons his spandex and zooms down the middle of the street? Is that who we're designing for? Or are we designing for the cargo bike that needs a lane separated? And or is it for the families who are introducing the youngest cyclers to give them, it's an acceptable alternative to waiting for a license at 16? Bringing those together and integrating the e-bike revolution into that gives a lot of challenge to what staff has to work on for guidelines and what council gets to think about as policy there. I'd like to have some of this referred down to PBAC and have the conversations kick around there so that staff has a chance to vet the new ideas with the public input at those meetings. And those would be my ideas on this one. Though I do see the point of moving ahead with capital projects. We have no use for money in reserves, and striping is the one thing that staffing still has a machine to do on their own. But they don't do slurry on their own, but they can stripe on their own. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Councilmember Healy?
Thank you. So we did get several public comments about 10-foot travel lanes. I can see how that might work on some of the arterials, but our residential streets don't usually have stripes down the middle of the street, much less stripes down the right side. So they're not striped, and there's no definition of what the travel lanes are. I would like to see, I'm very curious to hear what staff's response to this is. I hope we can get to a point where we can move this forward tonight with direction, because I think we have a critical need to get this money out there and spent for fixing our streets. So anyway, thank you. And I'm curious to hear what staff has to say.
Thank you. Before we go to staff, I would just like to weigh in that, everybody needs to have a smooth surface to drive on, whether it's or walk on, whether it's your bike or your scooter or your walking or your automobile. So I am interested in moving this forward, and I do agree that if there is striping that needs to be done, and I think it does, that can be done at some time soon once that's decided. But Councilmember King brought up the question of the 10-foot lane. And those of us who were part of the council during the time of the road diet understand that the reasoning for removing one of the lanes on Petaluma Boulevard was to widen the lane so that our emergency vehicles could get down it safely. And, it was not about making traffic necessarily safer, faster, or whatever. It was for emergency access. And this is why, as Councilmember McDonald pointed out, we don't make these decisions on the fly. So I do think that the conversations about these issues as we go forward need to take place, and PBAC seems like the right place for that. But I do hope that this will go forward, and that if there is striping that needs to get done, it will get done. So Vice Mayor, before we go to staff.
Yeah, I realized I hadn't asked my questions, additional questions of staff, so I just want to do that before it went to staff. So I also would like to hear comments. We heard public comment about trees. I want to hear if there's any plan to put trees on any of these streets. I'd like to understand what the alternatives might be that might be considered. I'd like to know how much striping we're planning to do for bike infrastructure here. What is the plan for anything to improve safety for pedestrians and cyclists? It's not in the plan. I'd like to also understand why we're spending transportation money and we aren't getting input from our PBAC committee on the priorities for transportation spending, considering that getting people out of their cars is the most tangible way to reduce emissions.
So with that, we will ask staff to please weigh in.
Thank you, Mayor and council members. Let's see here. Ken Eichstedt is on with me, and I think I'll kick off some responses, and then I'm going to ask to help me out with some of the more detailed responses. A lot of questions swirling, and I will say that this project did go to PBAC, and this street list was approved by PBAC, recommended to council in 2020, and approved by council in 2020. So there was a public process that preceded this piece. This piece of this particular project is sort of post concept approval, and really now looking for the approval to execute the contract. The funding is SB1 funding, and that funding is less focused on bike ped, more focused on the on pavement condition and improving pavement condition. This project is part of a larger pavement management plan that incorporates other reconstruction projects, some that you've seen built, some that are coming down the pike, and we also have other funding for bike ped focused projects that we are seeking, that we generally receive funding from annually as well. So this is a part of a larger project, and it has had public input, not this council's input per se, but we have taken those steps, and that we didn't communicate, our commitment and focus on bike ped is lamentable in that staff report, and I hope that we can convey what we're doing and how we plan to do it. I will say that the design is not fleshed out. These projects are, and Ken will be able to speak to this more directly, but when we award a contract, of course it includes striping, and Ken, like many of you, is an avid cyclist, and he is also our liaison to PBAC, and acutely aware of the need for bicycle facilities, improved bicycle facilities, more bicycle facilities, striped bicycle facilities, and so am I. And to the extent that we can incorporate that augmented striping and also some pedestrian safety improvements along the way, we intend to. This particular funding from SB1 is focused on pavement condition. And so we are expecting that we'll be able to stripe when we restripe. Of course, once you slurry seal or cape seal, you have to restripe. You've erased all the striping, you've covered it. So the striping goes without saying, it will happen. And how we do it is what is critical, and what I understand is your concern and ours, our focus as well. So let me set that piece aside. The question of 10-foot traffic lanes. so 12-foot wide traffic lanes are the the highway design standard for many of our roads in town. 11-foot, a slightly narrower lane, I think that our traffic team is supportive of. 10-foot, when you get down to 10-foot, it is very restrictive. It definitely will calm traffic. It is known to do that. It is also known to be so restrictive as to possibly impede some of the larger vehicles, I think this was pointed out. So depending on the street and the services, it is certain, on our road diets, it's something that we can look at, and I will let Ken speak to specific locations where it's more appropriate than others, given the street list that we're presenting tonight. Let's see, I also wanted to talk a little bit about the trees. So tree planting is not something that this particular funding source will, it's not eligible for the SB1 funding. The SB1 funding is about the road. That there might not be opportunities where we could augment the project with another funding source where we might be able to incorporate some additional street trees. We are very careful from an engineering standpoint to locate and size any trees to be mindful of site distances and to not create safety hazards on the road for pedestrians and cyclists and vehicles. So trees are always something that we look at very, very carefully. And of course there are other issues with trees, and it has to do with where they're being located. And if we're putting, trees in residential areas on frontages of residential projects, then we would be committing those residents to maintaining those trees. And not every resident perhaps is excited about that. So a bit of extra outreach in that regard to see, what the communities and neighborhoods will tolerate, what they're looking for, and how we'll handle the ongoing maintenance and care if we do incorporate something like that. But I will tell you that tree planting was not envisioned as we have constructed, imagined, if you will, this project. And then I think that I will ask Ken to maybe talk a little bit more about some of these concerns. Ken, if you could speak to the 10-foot travel lanes a little bit, and then speak to the level that that you feel striping improvements for cyclists will be incorporated.
Okay, thank you, Gina. Madam Mayor, council members, I appreciate very much the opportunity to talk on this because in all my past history of basically the last 25 years, when I've spoken to council members, it hasn't been as receptive previously. So I'm glad for this opportunity to try to help guide you through some of the decision process as a traffic engineer representing the city. With regard to the 10-foot lanes, so SB1, it comes from the state and it follows the street and highway code. And from that, we get the highway design manual. 11-foot lanes are what are the minimum that were required next to bike lanes. It's in chapter 300. I would feel uncomfortable in deviating, particularly with state money, to something that I can't go in with a specific legal design document. And that's really what the highway design manual is. I wish it was different, frankly, but it has changed a lot in the time that I have been involved, because it used to be 12 foot. They dropped it to 11 foot. They'll let turn lanes be 10.5, but they won't let travel lanes. So, you know, your legal maximum width of a vehicle, of a public safety vehicle, of a fire truck, is going to be 8.5 feet. We've got some big trucks in town, 8.5 feet. They've got mirrors that stick out. Pretty soon you're at 10.5 feet pretty easily. And it's an uncomfortable situation to create a narrow 10-foot travel lane if you've got an operational vehicle, that a public safety vehicle, that's going to exceed in the overall width. So that's a little bit about that, that part of it. Active transportation is a key part of this whole project, and we're just getting started with the work in redoing the Petaluma, streets and roads, and we've got a lot of work to do. So, I recommend, taking a look at the March 8th of this year or the January 6th of last year, the presentation that was made showing how we developed the program for these streets, because it's very strategically set up. We didn't just pick these streets willy-nilly. It's strategically set up so that we save the streets that are savable before we end up with an organized pile of rubble. We don't want to go down that road. So, so that's the background on collected through the MTC's Street Saver program is an important part of this. I do want to say that we've done some really, really great things in the city here. Lakeville has some green bike lanes. Sonoma Mountain Parkway, green bike lanes. We're going to see them on Petaluma Boulevard South Road Diet. Maria, it's got great curb ramps for pedestrian safety. It's got bike lanes. We're just kicking off North McDowell. It's going to be a good project. I have to see what the right-of-way width is and what it looks like. The background information. We had a good meeting with PG&E, but we've got some, transmission lines that are closer to the surface that are going to present a challenge. We've got a lot of things that we're just understanding and developing on that project, but active transportation is a key part of that. I need to see what we can do to get the sidewalks in there, and with $4 million, what are we going to get? And then to make sure we don't preclude, if we don't have all the money now, we don't preclude, the future development. So we're looking at it in a very, a very holistic way to make sure that we provide infrastructure it's going to be, helping our kids' kids, get to school, get to jobs. And so we are doing that. I want to mention, it was sent to Council Member Barnacle. I believe Brian Cochran should have sent it. It was what we did on Eli and Caulfield. Not directly a paving project, but it's a clear representation of how we can provide for safety. We had a number of collisions there. Action needed to be taken, and the city engineer, Jeff Stutzman, did a really good job to put something together, low cost. Basically, it's paint on the ground. It's got some vertical stanchions, and it's got the signs shifted into the better line of sight. That was a quick build project, and that's the type of thing we want to do as we move forward with the pavement restoration project. And we will be doing for any pavement work. We'd be looking at all that. So take a look at Eli and Caulfield and how we treated that. So, and I also want to mention that the wayfinding, that contract is circulating. We've selected the consultant. They're working in Cotati. They did Novato signage. So that work is moving forward. And the bike ped master plan update, that contract will be circulating here shortly as well. So, and definitely got doing, how do we go from slow streets into a more permanent situation, like with bike boulevards. So thank you very much. If you have any other questions, I'm here to answer them.
Thank you, Ken. And thank you, Gina.
Excuse me.
Oh, did you want to say something more, Gina?
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but yes, just real quickly, just to put a finer point on the idea that this project that you're looking at, the item 3E project for pavement management, is one of many projects that we'll be bringing forward for a lot of reasons. We're anticipating more grant money to become available. We are particularly larger grants for quick build projects. We're developing and trying to get creative about quick build projects, particularly for bike ped focus, because they lend themselves to that. And with Measure U funding, we have more opportunities opening up for us to, with no restriction really on how those monies are spent. That's Measure U money. That's where council can set those guidelines and priorities on how we spend those funds. Unlike this project, which is SB1, who's telling us how we can spend these funds. And then there are TDA funds that are bike ped project oriented that we will be receiving. So there's a lot more projects coming down the pike. We realize that we can't do everything that we would all like to see on this one, but we can get a good way there. And I think you will see some striping on these projects for bicycle access and bicycle lanes that was not there before. But I just want to make sure that we try and keep this in the context of the bigger picture is all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And so we have 3 hands up, and it was Barnacle, Healy, and Fisher.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, staff, for the comments back. So the street saver presentation from the Measure U workshop, I commented on that it doesn't take into account VMT reductions or equity. And one of the things that I don't think is taken into account in the current staff report is public safety. Our police chief comments constantly that accidents on our roadway are a major cause for calls and fatalities, injuries, things like that. And I'm not seeing how the streets that we've selected are overlaid with any sort of accident data. I'm not seeing the strategy and the intention that I'd like to see in this stuff, especially considering that I've continuously asked about active transportation and what we're doing, and I don't see that in this. It feels like I've been ignored, to be frank. It feels like there's a lot of people who have been calling for active transportation and we're being ignored. I'm not concerned so much with how we stripe as I am about what the projects in the streets are and what the purpose of the projects are. I'm not seeing how the purpose of this project is to improve public safety, improve equity, or reduce our greenhouse gas emissions. And I see that it says that we will do class 2 or 3 bike lanes if possible, but without any money attached to it. I don't know that that's going to happen. And I don't know that that we're going to go back and see this improved. And quite frankly, when I see these little clusters of residential streets, I'm just not feeling like it's making it safer for anyone to use their bike to get somewhere and actually navigate the city on their bicycle. And I just, I don't see how we can, as the council, consider ourselves responsible stewards of the public dollars and not be taking public safety to be the top priority when we're investing in the worst roads in the Bay Area.
Are you done?
for now.
Yes, okay, thank you. I just didn't hear an end there, sorry. Councilmember Healy, then Councilmember Fisher.
Thank you. So, you know, this is an opportunity to put SB1 funds to work. And when we're using SB1 funds, we have to go by the state's rules for using SB1 funds. I think staff has gotten the council feedback loud and clear to the extent that we have any flexibility for striping and bike and pedestrian facilities in these projects, that will be incorporated. And I think we should move forward on this. And at this point, I will move to approve item 3E. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Fisher.
Thank you. So just in case staff hadn't gotten it loud and clear, I want to add my voice to wanting to make sure that we narrow lanes wherever we can. It is a safety issue. It does slow traffic down. It makes it safer for bicycles and pedestrians. And I want to push back on staff a little bit about 10-foot versus 11-foot lanes. The redo of B Street recently has 10-foot lanes. I'm not sure anyone's noticed that they're 10-foot lanes, but there's a lot more width for me on a bicycle on that street. So I'm really glad that you are committed to restriping where you can to narrow lanes and to increase bicycle separation just with a stripe. And I think that there's, you know, the opportunity on Bodega, on McDowell, and particularly on McDowell, because we're going to be doing a redo of half of a portion of that street, and then we're doing a slurry of the other portion of it. So how do we join those two, I think, is important. And Payran, so we're reslurring Payran to get to the Lynch Creek Trail. There's an opportunity there, and linking that to the train station. And I don't know what Cronulla looks like, because I haven't been on it, but it seems like that's quite a distance and an opportunity there as well. So with that, I will second the motion.
Thank you. And Councilmember King.
I was going to second. That's all. That is all.
Thank you. So we have a motion by Healy, a second by Fisher, and we will have a roll call vote.
Barrett,
Yes.
Barnacle,
No.
Fisher,
Yes.
Healy,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
Posake.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-1.
Thank you very much. And with that, we will go on to new business. So we have item 4A, which is the resolution urging CalPERS to divest CalPERS holdings in fossil fuel companies from statewide pension investments and to offer member agencies portfolio options consisting of high-performing environmental, social, and corporate governance investments that exclude investment in fossil fuel companies. And that will be Corey Garbarolio. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Barrett and council members. A quick introduction for this item. Petaluma is committed to the environmental and economic sustainability of our city and has taken many actions over the last 2 decades directed at climate change response. Those actions taken to date do aim to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and more recently elevate climate issues to the highest priority in the city's goal setting process. Although we have outsourced our retiree investment portfolio management to CalPERS, our obligation to invest in a manner that is committed to the well-being of our community remains a top priority. The action this evening urges CalPERS to invest responsibly and align the city's portfolio investments with the values of our community and the council's policy direction, a direction that seeks to achieve carbon neutrality by 2030. Advocating for these changes to the CalPERS investment portfolio would allow the city the option to impact greenhouse gas emissions beyond city limits. So with that, it is recommended this evening that the City Council adopt the resolution urging CalPERS to divest in fossil fuel industry and to offer member agencies portfolio options that exclude investments in the fossil fuel companies. And we are happy to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you very much. I see one hand up, and that's Councilmember Healy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Corey, can you just confirm, I believe the amount of money the city has invested with CalPERS is somewhat over $100 million. Does that sound right to you?
Yes, it's 237 million.
Oh, I was way off. Thank you. So it's a big chunk of change. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And not seeing any other hands, we will ask the city clerk if she's received any public comment on this item.
Madam Mayor, we received one public comment, which is posted with the agenda packet.
Thank you very much. And Patrick, would you please see about opening public comment on this item?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of the public wishing to speak on this item, please raise your hand in Zoom and you'll be called on in turn. I am looking. I do not see any hands raised, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. So with that, we'll close public comment on this item, and I will bring it back to the council, Councilmember King and Vice Mayor Posake. No, Barnacle.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll move the item and just have a quick comment to members of the public that might be concerned about our position and its impact on the investment. There have been several studies, including from investment houses, that have been part of publications, and I believe both the New York Times and the New Yorker recently, that pension funds that divest in this manner actually do a little bit better than those that invest in these types of stocks. So with that, I'll move the item.
Thank you. And Vice Mayor Barnacle.
I'll second it and also offer a comment. Is it possible for when we adopt this to send this to other cities as a model that they can encourage them to do the same? Is that something that's possible? That's I guess my question.
And that would be a question not to me, but I don't know. Maybe the city attorney has an opinion about that, or the city clerk. I'm not sure which of you.
Sure, Madam Mayor and Council, the council's official action documents on which it takes action, and its public documents. And if that's the council's direction, in fact, there was something that I think was addressed briefly in the staff report. If you'd like us to share it, we can do that. We can do it on the website. I'm not our communications expert. That's our city manager and Ingrid, but we can certainly do that if that's the council's direction.
So would the maker of the motion have any opposition to circulating the letter?
Not at all. In fact, I agree. We also have email accounts ourselves, so we can do it that way. And we know other elected officials in the region. So.
And many of us have social media accounts. So with that, there's a motion by Councilmember King, seconded by Vice Mayor Barnacle on item 4A. And so could we have a roll call vote, please?
Barrett. Barnacle.
Yes.
Fisher.
Yes.
Healy.
Yes.
King.
Yes.
McDonald.
Yes.
Posake.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. And so now we're on to the public hearing, and this is item 5A, introduction, the first reading of an ordinance amending the text of the implementing zoning ordinance section 6.070D and 6.070G, general provisions for the purpose of establishing freeboard requirements for installed equipment for residential construction and manufactured home parks. And this is Gina Benedetti-Petnick. I believe you're going to lead on this? Yes. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Council, for suffering another one of my presentations. I'll keep this relatively brief. I'll try. what I think a simple zoning text amendment, but does require a little background and explanation. By way of background, the city of Petaluma has participated in a program through the National Flood Insurance Program called CRS. There's a lot of acronyms, as you saw in the staff report. CRS is a community rating system, and it's administered by NFIP for FEMA. And if you meet criteria through this program, it allows a community to offer discounted insurance rates to residents in the floodplain. And the things that we do to participate in this program, they're rated. It's quantitative, all quantitative. It's monitored annually, and basically the measures that we take in flood prevention provide credits toward our discount. And we've been doing participating in the program since 2001. Our rating, our CRS rating, is a Class 6 rating, and for all of those CRS communities that have a Class 8 or lower, there is this new requirement from FEMA. It is a requirement that was just enacted in January, and we have a finite deadline to comply with this to bring our zoning ordinance consistent with the new requirement so that we can maintain our CRS rating. And the requirement is very simple, actually. It's that when we have residential construction in the floodplain, we now have to require as a community that any equipment installed in that construction be installed a minimum of 12 inches above the base flood elevation. So freeboard is the term that's used for that. It's actually an old maritime phrase that speaks to the distance on a ship from the water level bottom of ship, water level to the top of the ship is the freeboard. In this case, freeboard for this equipment is the base flood elevation water level to where we install the bottom of the equipment. And it is that same 12-inch freeboard that we already have in our zoning text that provides that residential construction in the floodplain needs to be a minimum of 12 inches, and that's the structure itself. We have to have our finished floors 12 inches above base flood elevation for anyone that constructs in the floodplain. So now the FEMA requirement has been made a bit more strict by now requiring any equipment. And equipment is, could be electrical panel, it could be a water heater, it could be any type of mechanical electrical equipment. And it's basically just providing a little more flood proofing, a little more resiliency in the event of a flood. And so this zoning text amendment that I'm proposing tonight will bring our IZO Chapter 6 floodway and floodplain districts into full consistency with the new FEMA language. And I have had a courtesy review by our CRS coordinator, and they've found the language to be consistent and appropriate. And I think the only thing that I should add is that we know that we have some work, staff and the community have some work to do on our floodplain provisions in our zoning ordinance. We know that the community, and I'm guessing that the council, want to see a much more restrictive zoning ordinance with regard to our floodplain development. And I know that we'll be working on this through the general plan update, and I expect that we'll be seeing more and more impactful changes to this zoning ordinance through that process. But at this point, at this time, I'm simply trying to maintain our status quo with FEMA and with the National Flood Insurance Program to continue to provide our residents with that discount because it is substantial and they do rely on it. So I think I'll end with that and take any questions.
Thank you. And I see one hand up from Councilmember Fisher.
But it's actually not a question because I was at the Planning Commission when this came before us, which I didn't mention in my comments. But I'm just, that's music to my ears when you say that we don't want to be building in the floodplain. I think that's, I'll be a champion of that. And I just want to caution that it's items like this where we have all these acronyms and we still have 19 people listening to us, and I'm not sure they know what those acronyms are. So I just want to bring that awareness that we really do continually try to spell things out for people so they know what we're talking about. And thank you.
Okay. I don't have any other hands up from the council members. Yes, Mr. Healy's hand just went up. Sorry.
I guess you have to ask for public comment first, but I'm prepared to move the item once you do that.
I actually have to open the public hearing. Thank you. So we'll hold that thought for a minute, and I will ask our city clerk if she has received any comments.
Madam Mayor, no comments on this item.
Okay, so I will ask our moderator to open public comment and open the public hearing.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Members of the public wishing to speak on this item, this public hearing, please raise your hand in Zoom and you'll be called on in turn. Okay, we have hands raised, so I will share my screen. All right, first speaker is Josh Simmons, followed by M. Ann Sullivan. You'll have 3 minutes in which to give your comments. Josh, you may unmute yourself and begin your comments.
Thank you so much. I'll keep this really brief. I'm always in these meetings for the long haul, and I really, really appreciate Councilmember Fisher calling out all the acronyms. There's a lot of stuff to wade through here. So I just appreciate the eye on making these things accessible. That's all. Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Josh. Next speaker is M. Ann Sullivan. Please unmute yourself and give your comments.
Yes, hi. Just a really quick comment to remind staff that the FEMA maps are not prospective, that they're severely outdated, and that we need to distinguish between the FEMA flood mapping and what we actually see happening. We even need better data than the 2017 Union for Concerned Scientists. There's more recent, more updated data than that. And that since, the 1950s, you all have been saying that the FEMA maps are the way to go, and we keep flooding and people have to pay for this expensive flood insurance, and we lose infrastructure, and it has consequences for our taxes. And as we know, Sonoma County is #1 for flood losses out of 58 counties in California and 11 Western states. And that's because we sit at the peak of landfall for atmospheric storms and because we build in vulnerable locations. So you've just approved another development in our floodplain based on these outdated FEMA maps. And it's just, how many times does everybody have to keep saying that if we continue to do business as usual, we aren't going to get where we need to go? These new developments are going to flood. When the black mold shows up, you're going to have to tear them down. And the reality is that this is not, we are so unique in that we're a river town. There's so few cities that have a river, or actually we're technically a slough, and the definition of a slough is a wetland. So our entire watershed is a wetland, and we're building on it, we're encroaching on it, and we're sinking concrete on it. And it's not going to fly, you guys. It's not okay. It's costing millions of dollars, and we're playing with people's lives and livelihoods, and we do not have an endless budget to put taxpayer monies toward this. There's so many important critical issues we need to deal with. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Okay, one more comment from Blake Hooper. You may unmute yourself and begin your comments.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say that I appreciate the comments that were made regarding our building decisions that have lately been based on outdated maps and plans, especially with regards to our flood zone development. That is why I cannot urge this council enough to take some time to really think about and give direction to the General Plan Advisory Committee and the chief consultant involved in this project so that we can actually develop for a better future and not wonder what happened to our planning process when it's too late. Thank you.
Thank you, Blake. And I'm looking, it looks like the last hand up, so I'm turning it back to you to close the public hearing, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. We'll close public comment in the public hearing and bring it back to the council. And I think Mr. Healy had his hand up. And
thank you. I'll move approval of the item.
And Council Member Fisher.
I'll second.
And with that, we'll take a roll call vote.
Barrett,
Yes.
Barnacle,
Yes.
Fisher,
Yes.
Healy,
Yes.
King,
Yes.
McDonald,
Yes.
Osake.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you very much. And I have two hands up from staff. Gina and then our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm sorry I couldn't raise my hand fast enough. I'm not used to raising my hand, apparently. But I'm happy to provide this comment after the vote. I just wanted to clarify something that came through from Moira Sullivan in public comment, and again, I think mentioned by one of our council members talking about outdated FEMA maps. And so a couple of thoughts on that. Our FEMA maps were last updated in 2016. So that was probably less than 5 years ago. It is a process to update the maps. And I don't disagree that they need to be updated again already. And part of that process has begun. So the city staff is engaging a consultant to start our new flood modeling with a new software that is a 2D software, HECRAS 2D. This is the software that Mayor Barrett referred to when we were talking about the floodplain retention projects in the North Watershed that the county is using. So the county is using this model. FEMA is now supporting this model just in the last, I think, year. I could be wrong on that, but it's pretty recent. And so we are beginning that process to update our flood model, and the natural outcome to accordingly update the FEMA mapping when we have that. So it's a process. It's going to take some time. It could be a couple years, and before all of that is tied in a bow and then going through the FEMA process. But I'm pursuing it, and I agree that we need to look at this and look at it hard. And I also very much want to incorporate, to the extent we can, an overlay of our sea level rise modeling, so that we can be looking at this comprehensively, because we are, as was pointed out, a very unique community, and we have a tidal slough, and we have a tremendous watershed, and so we have to understand first and assess the extent of those risks at the convergence of those two phenomena, and then figure out how we want to mitigate and protect. So we're keenly aware of that, and I share the sentiments I've heard, and I just wanted council to know that we're working on it.
Thank you very much. And city attorney.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. And with your consent and that of the council, now that that item has been concluded, the public hearing item, I actually wanted to return to the proposed agenda that was approved tonight with the addition of an opposition letter to SB 556. Staff have been doing some checking in the background, and SB 556 is scheduled for hearing before the Energy, Utilities, and Communications Committee on April 19th, as I believe one of the members of the public suggested. And the League has requested submission of letters by April 14th by noon. So the 19th is going to be too late, and that means that unless we're going to schedule a special meeting before that time, we'd like to suggest that the council, with respect to that item, authorize staff to prepare a letter, and if it's the council's preference for us to work with less than a quorum of the council or a member of the council to get that ready for the mayor's signature prior to the submission deadline on April 14th. We'd be happy to do that. So we thought that was important information for the council regarding addressing that item. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councilmember Healy and then Councilmember Fisher.
Thank you. So yeah, I appreciate that, Eric. Of course, that information was on the email from Nancy Hall Bennett. That one particular committee hearing is just the first committee hearing in the House of Origin. It's still going to have to go to a floor vote in the Senate, and then it would have probably additional committee hearings in the Senate before that. And then if it survives that far, it has to go to the Assembly and have hearings in Assembly committees, and then the Assembly floor. And if it gets that far, it goes to the governor. Governor Brown actually vetoed a similar bill in the last session. So I think it's going to be more impactful to have our 7-signature letter go out after our next meeting. So that would be my preference, even though we miss, as you indicated, the first committee hearing in the House of Origin. Thank you.
Councilmember Fisher?
Well, I was just going to recommend just the opposite, that we just have an ad hoc committee to get it done and get it out. So it is one of the first letters in.
And I would like to make a suggestion that we do both. I would like to say that we do an immediate letter, and I was already working on a letter to send out tomorrow anyhow, but I would like to send something out so that it makes the first committee, and then have another letter, even perhaps the same letter, go out again with all 7 signatures, because I do think that that's important. So I'm not exactly sure how we handle this procedurally, since are we reopening the question about the agenda, or city attorney?
You may. We just and staff are happy to take. Councilmember Healy was absolutely right in what he's described in terms of process. We just wanted to be sure that the council was aware of the timing, and you may revisit. I mean, you took action with respect to the proposed agenda. This meeting isn't adjourned yet, and that was you can revisit it tonight if you wish. You don't need to. We just wanted to share that information, and are happy to take the council's direction.
Okay, well, before we go on with direction, let's talk to Councilmember King.
Yes, Madam Mayor, I was going to suggest we do the following if it's appropriate. We've already approved the agenda for 2 weeks from tonight. I agree that a 7-signature letter is more impactful, and we want to continue with that. But I think you have the direction from what you can gather from the comments tonight for the staff to write a letter, the city manager signature in advance of this committee meeting. As long as we're not in violation of any Brown Act considerations, I would suggest we just do that. And if we are, then, I'm open to other suggestions to get the letter there in a more timely fashion. But I do agree that having all of us sign something is way more impactful, quite frankly.
Okay, so I would just recommend that we keep the item on the agenda for the 19th. And I am going to write a letter and I can coordinate that with staff if that would be better. And everybody else has the right to write a letter, but then I think we should all write a letter as, you know, the 7 of us together, which is what we agreed to for the agenda item. So I think with that, we probably don't need any action, but I will let the city attorney tell me whether or not we do.
That works for me. Peggy, did you have any questions or suggestions for the council?
Nope, that works.
So, thank
Okay.
you.
All right, and thank you again, Mr. Healy, and to Ms. Obaid for reminding us about that timeline. So with that, we are adjourned.
Night all.
Good night.
And